Okay, so welcome everyone to our joint M&E and KM Task Force meeting. It's great to have you here with us this morning, and nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. I'm Yemisi Sungo-Williams. I'm the KM Specialist for TOPS, and I'll be hosting today's meeting with my colleagues Adrienne Tadella and Iris Xu. We also have in the room with us Sheila Jackson, who is the Senior KM Specialist for TOPS. Sheila is also the chair of the KM Task Force. And we have Laurie Starr, who is the Senior M&E Specialist for TOPS, and she also chairs the M&E Task Force. So Sheila and Laurie will be facilitating the discussions we'll have in a bit to show us how we as M&E and KM professionals can really try and work together effectively for better programming outcomes. So this session was planned as a follow-up to the first ever joint M&E and KM-TF meeting that we had in November 2015. And during that meeting, we really got together to look at whether there was a need for M&E and KM functions to collaborate and coordinate better, and also what the possible benefits of that synergy would be. So today, we're hoping to talk through what this potential integration would look like, and what we as practitioners within each of these sectors can do to make this happen. So let's start with a quick look at the agenda. We've done some welcomes, a bit of our icebreakers with our polls. Sheila and Laurie are going to take us through some very brief overview presentations of KM and M&E, just to make sure that we all have the same understanding and picture of each other's sectors. Then I'm going to do a very quick recap from our previous joint task force meeting, just to share some of the thinking that happened during that meeting. And then we'll go on to do 2 exercises. Then we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So we've had these 2 meetings. What do we do with all the information that we've discussed? What do we do with some of the points that have come up? And then we'll close, hopefully in good time for lunch. So over to you, Sheila, for an overview of KM.
Thank you, Yemisi. Appreciate that. Welcome to everybody. I'm excited to see everyone here and still very interested in this topic. Everybody can hear me, correct? Okay, good. So first thing I'm just going to give you is a brief overview of knowledge management. I'm going to do my best to keep it brief because as a complete KM geek, I could go on about this forever, but I don't want to put you all asleep, so we're going to keep it pretty short. So the first question you might ask is, what is knowledge management? So I'm going to let you into one of the most well-kept secrets about knowledge management. There is no one agreed-upon definition of KM, which puts us at a bit of a disadvantage when we're trying to promote the benefits of KM and sell KM, when you can't exactly tell anybody what it is. It's really hard to get anyone to get behind you. Also, as a practitioner, I find it very frustrating that a lot of the people on the academic and theoretical side spend a lot of time debating this question instead of actually kind of moving the field forward. That's my own pet peeve. But anyway, so, if there's not an agreed upon definition, how can I give you a little overview of actually what it is? Well, you may have heard KM described as many different things, and this is because we can't describe it. So people, processes, and technology seems to be one of the latest buzz. The know-how inside our heads, working together, changing the way we do business, which are all really awesome and make excellent graphics, as you can tell, trying to illustrate what we all think KM is, but they really don't get to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. And I want to kind of focus on, you see kind of this question mark that's supposed to be the iceberg in the lower left-hand corner. It says up there at the top of the know what and the know how. And just to give you a little kind of go into a little bit of geek speak about KM, we all know what information is, and a lot of times KM information kind of gets locked into it. And information is important, but information is a very tangible thing. There's things that is very easily kind of collected and codified. Knowledge is much more messier. It's a lot of stuff that's in our head, and it's hard to capture. and trying to capture it is very difficult and can make something that's a very streamlined process seem very laborious. So the know what, if you look at that as the information, that's the stuff on the top of the iceberg, and know how is everything underneath. And it's a little bit harder to get to, and that's something very kind of a big thing that KM always uses. But it's much easier when we're trying to describe KM is actually talk about the various different activities you can do inside of KM. The big thing, probably one of the one is learning. Learning has in many ways become synonymous with knowledge management. Knowledge capture, it's what I talked a little bit before about the information capture, but trying to capture all that messy stuff in our head. Let me give you kind of an example to help you find the difference between information and knowledge. In a previous job I had, I was in charge of our training program. And I had all these wonderful kind of teaching aids, facilitator's guide, where I literally wrote step by step, okay, if it was SharePoint, first thing we're going to do is show people how to upload a document. I put all the things in there. And then next thing, how to share a document. Very clean-cut, precise steps. But we got into a training room one day, and my colleague who I was training, I immediately looked at her in the training room. I said, don't use these first two terminals here in the second row. They don't work. That was nowhere in any of the guides I had told her. It was something that I had just learned from using that training room, and something I never even thought about putting down. But as soon as we got in that room and we were setting up for training, it clicked. That is the difference between information and knowledge. And me trying to put all those little different intricacies in an instruction document would make that document so thick, so laborious, you never get through it. So that's kind of a difference there. Communication is a big part. There is no use in us learning all this and knowledge if we don't let people know what we're doing and what we're learning. Knowledge sharing. Knowledge sharing is another thing that's almost synonymous with knowledge management, and something here at TOPS we do a lot. Getting people together to share what they know so that it's not just kept up in one person. Collaboration. Collaboration is more than working together. Okay, collaboration implies interaction and sharing. You can sit next to some person for 10 years in your office, never talk to that person, never know what that person does much more than what they did on Saturday. Collaboration is actually, it's more intentional and formal and really getting to what they're doing. Information management. Information does have a place in KM. There's a lot of information there. Think of the web, think of libraries. Knowledge management can really help bringing that together and making sure people can find what they need. Applications, a big thing, is another really good activity. And this is where I think a lot of where M&E comes in. It's not enough for us to capture this knowledge. It's not enough for us to learn if we don't turn around and apply it. Okay, and so I got 2 minutes left. Told you it goes very quickly. So why do we need KM? Okay, institutional knowledge walks out the door every day. You might have heard a big thing in KM is we're tired of reinventing the wheel. Well, if we figure out a way to increase a learning environment, it'll be better that we can make sure that people actually move forward and learn. And this is a big thing with the program cycle. Getting KM from the beginning, make sure that we're actually going forward. Avoid making the same mistakes. I remember in the poll that we did in just did at the thing, someone said, you know, we want to avoid redundant work. We want to avoid making mistakes. KM helps you do that because it is learning and building on what you learn instead of always starting from the beginning. Move forward, improve innovation. KM really empowers people to sit down there when they're collaborating and talking to each other to come up with very different things. And it also allows you to develop your employees. None of us want to sit there and do the same thing every day, so if we give them a place where they can learn and talk and they can move forward. But I need to just, one more thing is, when we're thinking of programming or anything else in our organizations or products, if we don't start putting KM at the beginning, putting that learning, it's not going to make as much of an impact. We can start from the beginning of learning, of making the mistakes and then learning from them. It makes much more sense to make that mistake and correct it in the first 2 weeks of your program or your project than after your midterm evaluation when you might not be able to do it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. This is Laurie Starr. And I was not present at the last joint task force meeting, but I've been going over the notes, and it seems that while we have a greater understanding of the, or greater definition of the role of M&E, but a key point that came out of your last meeting was there's not a great understanding or designation of the various roles, and in order to coordinate and integrate the two technical areas, we need to not only understand what we're doing, but when we're doing it. So I've organized this overview around the program cycle so that we can optimize the integration of the two technical areas, by timing. We may say we're ready to coordinate, but if the train has already left the station, it won't be as effective. So using sort of a common 4 areas of program cycle of USAID's assessment phase, design phase, and implementation phase, I reached out to the M&E task force, and thank you to all who contributed to this. We came up with, in the assessment phase, and this is pre-award, so this is when we're going after an application, not a baseline assessment. But our key job as M&E staff is to coordinate the evidence base. We may be generating data, we may be gathering secondary data, but we're collecting an evidence base that the whole team can use to effectively target, to design effective activities, most appropriate activities, and in some cases, if you have the luck to have a budget that allows for an external team to come in and provide you with an assessment to inform an application, M&E staff are involved in developing the terms of reference for that external assessment. In the design phase, and again, this is all theoretically, this is where our job descriptions say we should be involved. It may not. I'm going to go into how we actually spend our time in a few moments. But theoretically, M&E staff should be heavily involved in the design phase. They should be involved in vetting the causal logic of our program hypotheses, the theories of change. They should make sure that our theories of change are measurable. So that includes determining indicators, but also ensuring that the theories of change link effectively to the log frame. In the implementation phase, M&E staff have 2 key areas of focus. One is accountability and one is learning. And I'm imagining that many of you out there in the M&E world will agree that due to slim staffing and slim budgets, we often get entrenched in accountability with not as much time devoted to learning as we would like. But our role really is to guide implementation to make sure that we're tracking progress. It's also to learn whether are the targets we set appropriate? Are the things we designed, are they actually the things that are most relevant? So our role really should involve the big L for learning more than it does, and this is an opportunity to link with KM, I think. In the evaluation phase, it varies by institution. Oftentimes these are external evaluations, and so a lot of M&E's role is to, again, it's about accountability, it's about learning. We get entrenched in accountability, making sure that the program is accountable both to beneficiaries and donors. And if we have time, we are also involved in generating a lot of data on effectiveness, the relevance, the kind of information similar to what KM is seeking and mining, but to make sure that we make better decisions the next time around at all levels of stakeholders, donors to beneficiaries to program staff. So that's, theoretically the roles of M&E within the program cycle. Where do we actually spend our time? A lot of monitoring, a lot in the implementation phase, a lot of input and output monitoring, a lot of process monitoring, looking at the quality of implementation. Again, if we're lucky, we've designed good systems that allow us to do performance outcome monitoring and, understanding if we're moving toward achievement of these outcome and impact indicators and our overarching purposes. If there's time, hopefully we're doing participatory program reviews. We're also reviewing and improving data quality. How are we involved in evaluation? Again, oftentimes this is done by an external team to reduce bias, but we M&E staff are heavily involved in ensuring that a rigorous evaluation takes place at baseline and at endline. We develop the terms of reference. We determine appropriate indicators to measure progress and impact. We come up with the key questions. We want to make sure those evaluation teams turn in a report that doesn't just give a descriptive, sharing of whether we did or did not meet indicators, but helps us understand what happened over the life of the program and why did it happen. We're involved in evaluation by collaborating on the baseline, midterm, and endline tool design, both qualitative and quantitative, and we ensure that sampling strategies are representative. So this is how we spend most of our time, and some of those bullets again are in best case scenarios. How do we wish we spent more of our time? Learning, right? The big L is what's often put by the wayside. Again, slim staffing, slim budgets. The type of efforts we feel are most valuable is the ongoing monitoring for learning. Learning falls into monitoring, it falls into evaluation. We want to be capturing these lessons learned so that we can inform future designs and future implementation, right? We want, it's the okay, so what, now what piece. We want to take the information we've gathered and identify how we should roll it out, how we should scale it up, and so forth. So I'll end that now. I'll turn it over to Yemisi to sort of give us a recap of what happened at the last Joint Task Force.
Thank you, Laurie and Sheila. I think that the point that you both make about the timing of this collaboration between M&E and KM is a really, really important one, and I hope we get to delve into it a little bit later today. But before we do all that, we just wanted to do a very quick refresher of some of the thinking that came from our last joint meeting in November. We had several groups trying to uncover what the advantages of a highly coordinated and fully functioning synergy between KM and M&E would look like. And the first advantage that we came up with was really stronger programming impact. So in this perfect world, M&E and KM planning would be done together. Both would be considered across all stages of the project cycle. Both would be seen as equally necessary to the project, and therefore they would both be adequately resourced and planned for from the get-go. And this strong synergy, we thought, would help to identify implementation issues which could be corrected. So we learn more, and we use this learning to do better work. A strong synergy between the two sectors would also help to develop a truly responsive organization, one that is able to provide accurate and timely information on impact. So there would be increased coordination between the two sectors. Reporting tools, relevant software, indicators would all be developed or selected in collaboration. So both teams can work together and share information easily, and also would be able to carry similar evidence-based messaging about our project and its impact. In short, there would be better dissemination and use of data. As we said before, successful collaboration between the two would also help to reduce redundancy in work and duplication of effort. Staff have easy access to the information that allows them to meet their project objectives. The final advantage we spoke about was that having these two sectors working closely together ensures that we are both monitoring for accountability and monitoring for learning or program improvement. So by working together, we make sure that the great learning that is gathered from M&E activities is recognized and applied on our project or on our program using KM approaches. And so we have systems and processes in place that help us to learn continuously and help us to perform better. And we did a quick poll at the start, and these are some of the similar things, that are coming out. So greater foundations and impact for learning and innovation, reduces duplication of work. So those were some of the same thoughts that we had in our meeting in November. Now over to you, Laurie, to guide us through how we can actually move this thinking forward.
Well, we'll be, I guess, breaking into a couple groups to get some ideas about how to move this forward. I took the input from the last meeting because I'm sort of a theory of change fanatic. And you have a rough problem tree, which is always the first step of coming up with a good theory of change, about sort of what is causing the problem at the top, the unresponsive organization, an unresponsive organization that's not able to provide accurate and timely info. So these all come from your bullets in your breakout sessions. And you can download this, I think, for easier viewing and then view it at a full page if you wish. The second page here is the flip side of that. It's taken the problems and shifted it into outcomes. So again, it's a very rough theory of change based on the joint task force input at the last meeting. But we come up with the same conclusions. So as we break out, and I know how familiar everyone is with theory of change work, but a key piece is that if you can identify the sequence of events, you can figure out the best point to start efforts. And you can see at the bottom we have a comprehensive understanding of both roles, which we've tried to stimulate some discussion about today. We work our way up into increased coordination and so forth. So as we break out into our groups, we need to come up with some clear, concise actions that we can start this theory of change in motion. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. It's a tool that if you find it helpful, use it. If you don't, you've already got some ideas about how to move forward. But we want 2 to 3 bullets from each breakout group on clear, concise actions that can start this integration in motion. How can we work together? We want to be very specific and very detailed. Are there questions about what we're asking the breakout groups to discuss? Is it clear? How can we start this train in motion, right, for better, more systematized integration of the 2 technical areas? And focusing on, first understanding of the roles, the valuing KM, which was a big point coming out of the last meeting, and maybe moving on up to the increased coordination if we get there. Okay, any questions? Okay, what is the context of the integration? Within our own projects and organizations, I would say, yeah, I would group your discussion. You'll each come from an organizational perspective, and please others chime in, but collectively discuss I think it needs to happen at the organizational level, but we can all hopefully come up with a similar strategy. Does that answer your question, Emily? Okay, great. And we can be here to, Sheila and I will both be in the breakout group. So if the ask or the task is not clear, feel free to ask during the breakout session. But right now, Adrian will be placing you into the groups. And again, we don't have a lot of time here, but 2 or 3 clear, concise bullets for sharing out in the next 15 minutes would be excellent. So each of you, I'd encourage you to appoint a note taker. And Adrian can explain that process. So I'll turn it over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Laurie. So what I've done actually throughout the beginning part of the presentation is I've dropped you all into 2 small breakout rooms. group 1 and group 2. It mirrors our small groups and in-person events. So in these breakouts, you'll be able to speak with your fellow group members and only within the group. So you won't actually be hearing what the other breakout group is talking about and speaking about too. In each of the room, there is a notepad that we've provided where you can type in your ideas, anything that you've brainstormed. The prompt for this exercise is also provided. And there's also a specific group chat which you can use to communicate within the group as well. So as Laurie mentioned, Sheila, Laurie, Yamasi, and myself will be hopping in and out of the two groups, with Sheila looking over group 1 and Laurie looking over group 2. And then one last thing, in terms of technology, I've given everyone microphone rights. So once you're dropped into the group, you can go ahead and just click on the mic icon up top to turn it green, and that should be it. You should be able to use your mic and start brainstorming. For this exercise, we have 20 minutes, and then so we'll have until 11:44 before we come back to the main meeting room and report out. So I know I've given a lot. Are there any questions before I start the breakout? Okay. Yes, and also within the breakout groups, there's a chat box that you can talk to us, and again, we'll be hopping over. So without further ado, I'm going to start the breakout.
Clear, concise action. We
can do to help these two technical areas to increase integration of
Yes,
these two
please,
technical
that's a great thing.
areas? We had a lot of broad
use the chat
ideas
box
at
if
the
we
last
can't go ahead. Also, one of the
meeting.
things we can do is you see in the breakout group where it says exercise 1.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing a lot of from the other breakout group. I'm sorry, I'm getting
Go ahead,
distracted.
everybody can go in and type in their input here as well.
So we're asking the group to come together and just come up with 2 or 3 bullets about
one of the things,
specific, detailed actions of how can we work together.
Step into the hallway so that we don't
what
hear each
actions
other.
could we take as
Give
a
me a
start?
second.
2, it may be just to increase an understanding of both roles within our institution. It might be, enhancing the value of KM so that they're there from the start, but thinking about the project cycle and the timing. What some clear steps that an organization could take to increase integration. Does that make sense now? And it may be difficult if we all have to type, so I appreciate your diligence and tenacity. I'm not sure why we can't hear you. Okay, and good. Glad that was clear, Rafeda. So those of you who are able to speak, I think Natalie, we heard her voice. I'd encourage those who can speak to speak, and those whose voice we cannot yet hear to go ahead and type. I can't hear anybody's voice, you guys. So if you can hear,
Right.
that would be helpful.
I'm gonna drop myself back.
Did we want to add one more, maybe one more bullet here on a concrete step to build clear roles? Ah, good. Thank you, whoever's typing.
Okay. All done?
We're going to be wrapping it up here. Natalie, I'm wondering, because you are the one person that everyone else can hear, are you willing to be the person who shares out?
Okay.
Did she say yes?
Oh,
Natalie, are you comfortable with that? Or I don't think there's anybody else that we can hear. Are you comfortable? We all will be sharing out now, and since you are the only other person we can hear, I'm asking if you're comfortable. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you are, that would be great. And if you don't want to, I can do it. But I think it'd be nicer if someone from the task force did. Sure. Okay. Thank you very much for volunteering.
all right. So can everyone hear me again? We're back to the main meeting room.
I can hear you, Adrian.
Perfect. Thank you. And then so we'll do a report out.
Yes. We will be recording.
We'll be reporting out now. And
I think we will.
Let's start with
Group number one. Sheila, I believe.
Group number two had
a bit of technical difficulties, so we were not able to make as much progress as we had hoped. But if I can turn it over to group number one to just share the key bullets that came out, the very concise actions that we could take as a start to better integrate the two technical areas.
All right, yes, and we had some problem with the microphone, so we just did it all through chat, and things seemed to work. But Ellen was able to use her microphone, so she'll be the one who will be reporting out for group one. So Ellen, take it away.
Okay, thank you. This is Ellen. I'm with Land O'Lakes. And sorry, somehow the group chat window popped up over our notes.
Sorry?
I don't know. Thank you. So we were talking about a couple different things and had some good input and discussion around kind of the need to require coordination. And having that, there's maybe a couple different ways that we talked about doing that, but whether it's people just talking together at a managerial level or having leadership kind of over both, but the importance of that coordination. And then also as well the division of roles. So there's understanding kind of who's doing what, again, so we're not duplicating efforts. And we talked about also some of that coordination happening early on, even at the program design stage, so that it's really being thoughtful and we're thinking about and creating the touch points over the life of the project where we want to make sure there's really strong coordination, as well as identifying those opportunities for coordination. And then, let's see, I think the other thing that kind of came up at the end is also, making sure that we're talking to the donors about, why we're coordinating and the importance and the benefits of that coordination back to the project. So that, because often M&E requirements, there are requirements around that, and the donors are really focused around that, and making sure to prioritize time for that coordination and the outcomes from both KM and M&E. Sheila, the rest of you, did I miss anything that was critical? Please, chat or add.
No.
Yeah, Ellen, I think you got it. Thank you. Anybody else? Please type anything.
Okay, so I think we're maybe starting with group 2, correct?
Oh, yes, Natalie, we are. Thank you. My microphone was muted. Thanks. Emily will be, or Natalie will be sharing. She's also the only one whose microphone is working right now. So thank you very much, Natalie, for volunteering.
Okay, so some of our discussion was mostly by chat, but it seemed to be similar. But it was around if budgets or structures don't allow for specific KM people, but to kind of add that learning KM component to job descriptions, kind of making it clear how they're different and like and what a learning component or a KM component would look like. We also talked about, which is similar to some of the comments about having a results framework on the last group, about ensuring KM processes feed into management systems and cycles. So, and then we talked about having kind of regular coordination meetings between KM if we do have separate kind of units between KM and M&E staff to figure out, you know, what's working well and what's not working so well. And just we had a question come up, I'm not sure how well we answered it, is how do we make sure, and it's important to make sure that it's really clear what the differences are and how they complement, but we ran out of time, or I missed the chat discussion where we talked about how we could do that, but we kind of had, the question came up about, you know, making people kind of understand the differences and how they complement each other, those two kind of areas. So anyone else can input, but that's kind of what I took away from our chat discussion.
If anybody else would like to add, feel free to type your comments. I think you captured that very nicely, Natalie. Sheila's typing something here, so we'll take a moment.
Yeah, if I could just say something real quick. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think both breakout rooms, we talked about the need for us to coordinate. And I know in our room, one of the things was talking about it. Really, whoever is going to coordinate and bring it forward has to really have those types of skills to really kind of perfect out. Sometimes when we work at this, someone has more KM expertise than they do M&E, or more M&E versus KM. And we really make sure if we're going to coordinate and move forward is the technical areas have to be kind of put on over equal footing. And I know Christy was talking about at World Vision, they're trying to figure out how to do just that, to make sure that the technical areas are on equal footing as the coordination really goes through is done kind of at an overview level. But both of us, we figured out we need to do that, and also it is to define our roles, and I think a lot of that means understand what each group brings to the table, figuring out the roles, and then we can identify the opportunities to move forward.
Great. Thank you. I think it's time to move on to the next session, so I will turn it over to Sheila.
All right. Well, thanks. So now that we've gone through this, we're going to go back in our breakout room. And one of the things we really like to do is, you know, we've talked about things that clear actions to start, but now we need to kind of talk, you know, some things we can do to move this forward. So I know it's overwhelming to say, and you're thinking, you know, this is a whole systemic change and everything, but just trying to think about what you can do, a very small thing you can do to kind of move this forward. So we're going to get into our groups again, and we're going to talk about that. What are, you know, some small steps we can take to go ahead and work on, you know, kind of this coordination or defining our roles or being in the being involved in the beginning? What are some things that we can go ahead and do to move that forward? So I'm going to let Adrienne do her magic and put us back into groups. And we'll take about 10 minutes to go ahead and talk about some small things we can do before we come back out to report out.
Right, so just a time reminder for this one, we'll come back to the main meeting room at 12:09. Okay. Okay, and
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie unless there's an objection when it comes time to share out. Sheila will.
All right. And
Sheila?
Sheila?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Is group one ready?
Yes, group one is ready. This is Ellen. We started out talking about really the importance of learning kind of from each other. So Cam learning more about M&E and understanding that better, and also vice versa. Both, I think, kind of from a technical sense and as well as like what we do. And we also talked a little bit about, developing kind of a data use plan and looking at, kind of what's happening, kind of the priorities of the project and the organization and the information needs and how to accomplish that. So kind of thinking a little bit bigger picture. We also talked about, some things that we can do, just learning and sharing best practices, and thinking about, are there ways to, like kind of focusing more on that, what can I do to move this along? Is there a pilot opportunity that CAM and M&E at your organization can partner together, just to have that starting place to kind of see how the activities and where you fit in with each other's activities, but really, taking one small step and doing a pilot. And then we also, we have that realization of we each have our own technical areas, and it's easy to kind of be in that space, but also then to kind of think bigger picture about the other end of the spectrum of not being so technical. We reflected back a little bit on, if we start at the beginning of a project, we can kind of help incorporate each other at the start of the project and pull in that coordination early on. And then a little bit that qualitative equals more qualitative, just recognizing that, the technical aspects of M&E, all the statistical information and all of that, how do you pull that together and marry, the best aspects of the quantitative and the qualitative, the storytelling of the together to have a really effective story and message out about a project. So I think that was, we were looking at, some things about learning as well as like kind of pulling down, like what can we individually do to move this forward. Sheila and the rest, if there's anything else you want to add, please, please chime in.
No, I think you got everything, Ellen. That was great. Thank you. Christy or Sujata, is there anything else? Okay, yeah, I think we're ready to go. Thanks.
Okay, all right. So again, Natalie's going to speak for our group. Go ahead, Natalie.
Okay, so
you can scroll down. I'm sorry, Natalie, I'm going to interrupt. If you're not able to see the notes, Adrian sent a message, but everybody can just scroll down to the bottom of the page if you're unable to see the notes. And then exercise 2 will appear.
All right. So for our group, we kind of focused on things that we could personally do, but also might be helpful as just general pointers for organisations that are looking to make some steps towards either improving KM or improving, overall understanding of how it fits into the programming cycle. So we talked about even ourselves, if we come from more of a M&E background or from another technical background, but we're kind of looking at knowledge management to kind of improve our understanding and the critical leverage points. So then we're able to better communicate that within the organisation. We talked about having M&E people as well as KM people come and share about their roles and key activities, so we have a better understanding, so say if you're a KM person, of the work plan for an M&E unit, and maybe the M&E unit have a better understanding of the KM work plan and where there's synergies there. Emily talked about just working with leadership, having formal presentations and meetings to improve their understanding of the distinction between these two kind of complementary areas. And I think one of the ones that I talked about was if you're not involved in, startup meetings and planning meetings for potential new projects, to kind of get yourself invited to those meetings and become an active champion in that process of making sure that KM is thought about and it's integrated into the project, working with finance to say, just as much as M&E needs money, KM needs money, and working out how to best budget for these kind of key components. And then also, depending on organisational context, but using USAID and as an example of where they're going in this area and the importance that they're placing on it, and that, as an organisation, you need to kind of keep up with what's going on at that level and use that as a tool to promote KM. So that's a quick summary from what I took from our typing between our group. So anyone else, if they have input, just use the chat or let me know.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And yeah, we took it as a personal ask. We took the I in this exercise seriously, of something we knew that we could concretely do, hopefully before the next time we meet, because sometimes when we put it forth that way, I know I'm more inclined to do something that I say, I have committed to learning more about KM. So if we could all maybe reflect on these points when we leave the meeting and think about what can I do, what's a small step that's going to start the big stone in motion. I'm going to turn it back to Sheila now as we move into next steps. I can also just be the crisis modifier here and jump in until we hear from Sheila. So moving forward, we hope this group will meet again. We want to think about what would be most useful. There are a couple of ideas. We could have people continue to work on the problem tree and the theory of change. Often, I don't know if that's interesting to any of you, but oftentimes having a conceptual graphic that helps us identify entry points, like the starting points, is very helpful. It's helpful in a project, but it's helpful to solve the problem we have, which many of us have agreed is an unresponsive organization with, uncoordinated efforts. So that may be a next step. Another step I noticed you mentioned in your last meeting, somebody had talked about coming up with again, a graphic overlay, an overlap. If we can get a better model of showing how the two overlap one another and particularly complement one another. I think graphics often speak louder than a lot of text. So something really showing in the program cycle how these two technical areas complement each other and where these critical points of critical opportunities for intersection fall. So those are a couple ideas of how the task force could take a next step. And I'll turn it over to Sheila now. She may have some other ideas.
Yes, can you all hear me now? Okay, cool. All right, yeah, I see things working. No, Laurie, yes, and we talked about that. The visualization and the theory of change are all very interesting ideas and things I think we can work on as joint task force to really kind of help all of us move forward. And also one of the things we want to do is hear from you guys. Do you have any ideas of things you would like the two task forces to work together to move things forward, to help kind of pave the way? So we're going to still have more of these joint ones so that we can really learn what each of us are doing and where we can identify opportunities to work with each other. So does anybody, and I know this is kind of off the cuff, but does anybody have any ideas right now? Feel free to please put those in the chat box. Also, there will be obviously other opportunities to go ahead and share when we are sending out all the information from today's meeting. So anything, I see some multiple typees are attending, so we'll wait for that to come in. And thank you all for participating. This was really interesting, and it's good. It's really good. And what I think something, if we want, from Sujata, if we want to learn more about each other, should we have some sort of presentation from reps of both streams of work? That's a possible thing to look at. Thank you, Sujata, to talk about those of what we are doing and what we kind of bring to the table. As Laurie and I both kind of talked about, it's not so much describing, it's the activities we are doing. Emily, I like the idea of having some sort of diagram or flow chart about the ways that M&E and KM overlap, where the distinct differences are, and what the communications of channels may be needed. Right, the graphic was a good idea, good. And one of the things we want to do is we want your guys' help with that. So we will be looking into holding some more phone calls, meetings, depending on how we could do, to bring you guys all together to help brainstorm with both of those deliverables, because we definitely want your input. It's going to only be useful if we do have your input. Yamasi would like some guidelines on the touch points across the program cycle where we can collaborate and how that would be helpful. Yes, Yamasi, that's a great idea, and I was thinking of that. I'm not sure if possibly the LEARN project has come up with some guidance of KM throughout the program cycle. Other people have maybe done this for M&E, but that's something I think we need to kind of look at, where do we kind of come in? Is there any official guidance there? Maybe even build some more on that. And Macedo has asked, how can both task forces communicate? Do we need to be part of other task forces, each other's task forces? Yes, you're open to be part of each other's task force. Both task forces, we have a presence on the FSN Network website. We also have listservs in which we communicate and try to have discussion forums. We might want to look at is, having a discussion forum where both task forces can be a part of it, so that you can be work together. And Yamasi, who is our discussion forum guru, she's going to go ahead and set that up.
Emily has a great point.
Right.
Can we touch on that, this last point?
I also think that there could be some difference with how this practically happens at different levels in the organization project. What are those different levels? That is a great point, and we know we run into that a lot. I know we run into that with KM. That's my area of expertise, the difference of looking at KM from an organizational perspective to a department perspective to, your individual project and activities, depending on how you do that. And that is, that is also something we need to look at. I know when we were doing the KM strategy, we did it from the project program level, because at the end it was to improve good programming. But also those different things, and when we were going forward, I believe, I can't remember who was the person to ask us during that first exercise, are we doing it at the organizational project level, or are we doing it at the USA donor level? And so I think that's one of the things as we're going through that, decide where we want the start to be in the focus and kind of go through that, and if there's a way we can kind of scale it up, but we need to always start at a common place. So thank you for that. Natalie is thinking at also the small, large scale, depending on the budget. Very good point. Yeah, I think we can do it. So, okay, so
I think you made a wonderful point as we were getting ready for this meeting, Sheila, that we would like to have something to leave behind. We'd like something where I think the graphics and these different levels, just something, if people are willing to be the champions and people are willing to bring it up at their management meetings, having effective tools to really you know, make those points clear where people don't have to do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
But it's like, let me show you why this is so relevant and needed. And that, I think, would just be all of these ideas, but somehow really committing to leaving something behind, a tool that others can use, or a structure, or that whether it's the presentations that Rafeda mentioned, but something that we can share across organizations to help champion the integration.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think that's something we should move toward. You know, when we're doing the visual graphic, you know, also clarifying the theory of change. Those, I think, will all be great things, and we should definitely shoot for and make it a goal that those are things we're going to develop into tools, products, whatever we want to call them, and make sure we leave those behind. And definitely task forces, both task forces, we want your input, because the way that it is going to be most useful for you and to really help move the integration is if we get your input. I mean, we can all do it according to, you know, Laurie and I could sit there and do it according to core group and Tango, but that doesn't help all of you guys. So we're really going to kind of come there and ask you, you know, not only for brainstorming, but also to do, you know, to do some proofreading and make suggestions. But I think we should definitely, yeah, let's leave some things behind. Let's do some tools and products so that everybody can have something to use. Okay? All right. So I'm going to hand it back over to Yamasi, and she'll close us out.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sheila and Laurie, for taking us through those discussions. Thanks again, everyone online, for your time with us today and helping us really think through what concrete actions we can take to move this forward. As Sheila and Laurie have both said, if anyone is interested in any of the tasks that we've identified today, whether it's helping with this kind of graphic to help champion integration between the two sectors, whether it's refining the theory of change, please let us know. We can get together and put some things forward. As usual, the webinar recording, some notes, and all the relevant resources we've spoken about today will be posted on the FSN Network website, and we'll let you know when those are ready. Thank you, Sheila and Laurie, for leading us through today's discussions. They were very interesting. I think we got some practical tips that we as individuals can already start to work on to see this integration through. Thank you, Adrian and Iris, for your help on the back end. And have a great day, everyone. See you next time.